Hamas says it cannot recover any more bodies of Israeli hostages without specialty equipment to clear rubble. The announcement comes after the remains of 2 more hostages arrived in Israel, and just hours after Israel said one of the bodies handed over earlier this week was not that of a hostage. Frustrations over the slow return of the bodies has prompted Israel to threaten to cut the number of aid trucks permitted to enter Gaza, just as aid deliveries have begun arriving into the territory. The UN has urged Israel to immediately open all crossings into Gaza as per terms of the U.S.-backed ceasefire agreement. Israel has yet to open the Rafah crossing with Egypt, Gaza's only one that does not go through Israel. All right, Aaron David Miller is a Middle East analyst at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. He joins me now for more. Aaron, welcome. Hamas says it has handed over all the bodies of hostages it has been able to recover so far, and it says that it's making great efforts to locate the others. As we try and move the ceasefire to the next phase, is it possible that this issue of the bodies could actually derail things already?
I think that's right. And this is the first crisis in an inevitable series of crises that's going to occur here. You're dealing with 2 parties that are pledged to one another's mutual destruction. There's no direct negotiation. And the compensating factor is, frankly, only one, which is Donald Trump. And the real question is now, I think, even though Hamas was only committed in the agreement to exert, quote, maximum effort, unquote, to try to locate hostages, and there was no timeline given. The Israelis also have 360 bodies of Palestinians that they're obligated to return. So this is going to block, to some degree, transition from phase 1 to phase 2. But let's be very clear. Transition to phase 2 it's not as if we're on the cusp of a breakthrough with phase 2. Phase 2 is decommissioning, demilitarization of Gaza. Phase 2 is the deployment of an international stabilization force. Phase 2 is the formation of a technocratic government under the supervision of an international board of peace. So there's a lot in phase 2 that's going to take a very long time in order to put together. It seems to me they will overcome this, but it is going to create a lot of broken crockery, particularly on the Israeli.
I want to jump in there real quick. I want to get to phase 2 in just a moment, but you said this won't derail it. Do you think then that the U.S. and Israeli government are on the same page when it comes to patience over this kind of bodies, the return of these remains? This seems like a big issue in Israel, obviously, for many of these families. The U.S. seems to be looking forward as much as possible. You think they're both going to get past this?
I do, and for 2 simple reasons. Number one, Hamas has an incentive. They have been persuaded, I think, rightly, to return the hostages because the hostages are no longer an asset. They're a liability. You've seen what's happening in the streets of Gaza. Hamas deploying police, executing and intimidating its rivals. Hamas is now back in an open way as a consequence of the fact that the Israelis have ceased their offensive military capabilities. So Hamas has a stake in trying to deliver on this commitment. Netanyahu, on the other hand, even though he may be under pressure to stall, to break the agreement, is not going to cross Donald Trump. So, yes, I don't think we're talking about some sort of imminent return to a major Israeli military offensive in Gaza. The war, as we've known it over the past 2 years, I think more or less is over.
Is Hamas really trying to keep public order when we look at what it's doing on the streets right now? We hear that they're out there, they're still armed to some extent, supposedly to keep public order. Or is it possibly consolidating its strength during this transition period to what's supposed to be this new governing structure? How should we look at this?
I think it's all of the above. Hamas has to demonstrate that it survived, not only that it survived, that it's capable of extending its administrative control through intimidation and co-optation over the areas from which the Israelis have deployed. The Israelis right now control 53% of Gaza. Most of the Israeli forces have been redeployed from urban areas. Who else is going to even pretend to suggest they have capacity to maintain law and order? There is no alternative. Hamas is cracking down on the militias, the Dagmush clans, the Abu Shababs, anyone that they believe cooperated, collaborated, interacted with the Israelis. They're going to consolidate their control and eliminate these groups, and they have the capacity to do it.
Right. As I mentioned, the Trump administration already talking about the next phase, deploying an international force to create enclaves free of Hamas. Help us understand how tricky that is in reality.
Sounds great in theory, doesn't it? But the reality is, who's going to deploy? What Arab security forces from any Arab state or from any Muslim country, including Turkey and Indonesia, are going to deploy their forces in a situation in which Hamas is still weaponized and the Israelis are still in half of Gaza? They don't want to put themselves in a position to be shooting Palestinians, the International Stabilization Force, and they certainly don't want to be holding Israel's coat while Israel shoots Palestinians. So right now, frankly, I think this is an untenable situation, and it reflects the basic problem, which is the Netanyahu government and Hamas's conception of the end goal in Gaza are mutually irreconcilable. Hamas wants to survive with the capacity to influence events there. The Israelis want to eradicate it as a military force and also undermine and eradicate its political influence. How you actually bridge that gap, I don't have an answer.
All right, that's Aaron David Miller. Thank you so much, Aaron.
Thanks for having me.